welcome back to Author Talk. Today I'm talking to Dave D'Alessio, who is our first sci-fi writer so far. And he has written a couple of short stories for daily science fiction, and what was the other one called?
Everyday fiction. I got Mad Scientist Journal. Be sure to get your copy now. Anthologies. Veterans of... Oh my God, I just couldn't... I blocked on that entirely. Veterans of Future Wars. VFW.
Veterans of Future Wars, yes. So I read your stories this morning.
Thank you.
And I have to say my favorite one was the Christmas one. Where essentially some aliens are very confused by the idea of Santa Claus because they don't think we have such technology.
Right.
How did you come up with that? Was it just kind of a silly thing
that was exactly what that was. I've been trying to get into daily science fiction as a market for a long time. They pay very well. And I would send them these elaborately crafted little stories. They buy nothing but flash fiction. They'd elaborately, and they would say, oh, maybe that's good, but it's not good enough. And I sat down and just knocked out this story, which is an alien, as you said, looking at Earth and saying, okay, we don't think much of Earth. You guys fly very slow and you pollute and you do all sorts of bad stuff. But you have this one piece of technology we want. The guy manages to get an unbelievable amount of weight of presents into one sleigh, which travels at an extraordinary speed, over 1,000 times faster than anything else. And so I knocked out this story. It's all told from the alien's perspective, and it's full of jokes and things like that, and sent it to them, and they said, we want it, and they ran it on Christmas Day.
It was very funny. And you can really tell that you had a lot of fun writing that one, too.
I had a lot of fun writing it. And putting in more jokes is always a good time.
Yeah. My favorite part was engineering. Engineer Glarb is very impressed with you.
Yeah, right.
So is there something that draws you to sci-fi more than any other genre, or you just kind of enjoy writing it more?
Well, I've always been into science fiction since I was little. I mean, I hate to say how old I am, but we used to read Robert Heinlein and Isaac Asimov and those guys when we were kids. So that's what I've always been interested in. And I think what it came down to is something that Heinlein said, later on in his life, that literature is about people being and science fiction is about people doing. And I think that's what attracted me to it. I went to engineering school, another shout out for Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And that's what you do. You learn how to do stuff, how to make things, how to build things. Mm-hmm. And so I think those two things go together. If you like putting puzzles together, if you like building things with your hands, you probably like science fiction.
It's true.
Yeah.
So your other story had to do with AI, your most recent one.
Right.
And that's
the big blow up.
Yes, and that's that was interesting because AI is something that we are talking about a lot recently, saying, well, where does it end?
Yeah, right.
And
that's sort of the question there too.
Yeah. So as an engineer, is this something like that you think about when you're writing your stories, or?
Well, you think about it in particular in terms of character, I think, as a writer,
Mm-hmm.
that's your interest in it. The AI in question, his name is Alexander, and he was originally the intelligence chip from a very smart bomb. Not a smart bomb, mind you, but a very smart bomb. And they end up having to turn him loose for a variety of legal reasons. Put him in a new body and turn him loose to drift around the solar system with no memory of who he is or what he was. And then the question is, of course, well, what do you do with that? He was made to blow up, hence the big blow up. But he can't and doesn't anymore. What do you do with that? If you presume that very smart intelligence is a person, and that's what we're trying to get at there, at least in part, is how much humanity is there in Alexander the AI, and how much is the bomb there in Alexander the AI. He shows up in another story later on.
I have to read that one.
No.
No. Oh, okay.
Not yet.
I'll read it.
Not ready for prime time.
Okay. So short stories seem to be what you've done mostly. Mm-hmm. Do you find it more difficult or easier than long form?
I don't like to correct the host on air. I've written a lot more novels. No,
yeah.
let me rephrase that. In terms of number, I've written more short stories. I mean, there's 30 or 40 short stories, and I have 8 out on the market now. Maybe there's an acceptance waiting in my email box right now. Let me check now. But I've written 16, I think the magic number is, novels now. I got started seriously writing with the National Novel Writing Month, November, do it. And since then, I've, pounded out a series of space operas. There's 9 in this series. I've got a new series of space light operas, and there's 2 in that series, and 1 more coming up in November, and so on. Okay. And what I decided, I made a conscious decision to write short fiction in between the National Novel Writing Months and the Camp National Novel Writing Months in August, April, and July, because they're very different ways to write. In particular, I wanted to write flash fiction. It's not an accident that I was writing A Modest Proposal was the Christmas story in daily science fiction. It's not an accident that it's in daily science fiction because they publish flash fiction. And I wanted to write flash fiction in between my novels in order to sharpen the chops. You know how it is, because I know you have worked on National Novel Writing Month as well, that you sit there and you say, I have to finish a certain number of words. And that means you can deviate off into subplots, you can tell jokes, you can go around and have sidetracks. And as long as you come back to the story and there ends up being a purpose to that, it works in the novel form. But in flash fiction, you can't do that. In flash fiction, you have to get in, tell the story, get out. So I started writing short fiction to train myself to write more concisely and differently than I do when I'm writing novels. And as it happens, I've had more success publishing the flash fiction than I have in publishing the novel, and that's partly because I have more confidence in the short stories than I do in the long ones. It's easier to get them published. So that's why my publications are all short stories at this time.
Yeah. Can you just explain quickly what a space opera is?
A space opera, well, no. It's one of those things that nobody can agree upon, but it's essentially a science fiction story that focuses on story elements rather than the hard science.
Okay, yeah. So.
I mean, the classic space opera is...
Star Wars?
Well, Star Wars is a good example, right? What happens when Han Solo sits down at the helm of the Millennium Falcon and he pushes the button and all the stars go whoo? Nobody knows any science that would do that. What happens is we have what's known in space opera terms as hand-wavium. Okay? That's what makes the Millennium Falcon go. That's how space opera works.
Okay, so it's like less technical sci-fi and more like
the opposite would be like Asimov's robot stories that are all built around the 3 laws of robotics that he would expect to have programmed into every robot. Okay, well that's science. That's the way machines work in his universe. And that's the opposite of space opera. It's the hard science fiction as opposed to the space opera.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I definitely like space opera better than hard science ones.
They're usually a lot more fun to read.
Yeah, I think you have to be you are an engineer, but I would say you have to be kind of a science nerd to like the hard science ones.
You should have watched me reading Mockingjay. It's a fun story, good character, science all wrong, all of it, all science wrong.
Well, it's a fantasy book, so
yeah.
Well, what are you working on something currently now? I mean, you have your space operas, but are you working on another short story?
Yeah, I'm good. Right this exact instant, I've got 2 things going on that I don't mind promoting if you're going to give me the opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah. Go right ahead.
One of my nano books. How do you like my cover? The Yak Butter Diaries.
The Yak Butter Diaries.
Yeah, this is one I really want to experiment with because it's something that's very unlike anything else I've written. It's a fantasy as opposed to science fiction or space opera.
Okay.
It's an allegory, which is, don't get me started. All right. It's very different from everything else I've ever written, and so what I want to do is send this out. I want to self-publish this, so I went out and found a nice cover. I like the cover. It reminds me of The Hobbit. Remember the original?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The journey and back again.
Right, and that's the kind of story it is. In fact, the tagline is A Long Day's Journey into Life. And the protagonist, Tamasan Acorn, is wandering around trying to find out where he's supposed to be in the world, and he finds all sorts of different places populated by all sorts of different people. and I'm not going to tell you how it ends because I want you to buy the book. Buy the book. And so then I want to get this out sometime before the end of the year, just self-published, to try and make an experiment out of what I can do and what I can see and what I can do in terms of marketing and stuff like that. So that's fun. I had a lot of fun writing that because it was like nothing I'd ever written.
All right, keep an eye out for Yak Butter Diaries by Dave D'Alessio.
And the first of I love Lulu. Have you ever experimented with Lulu.com? You send them your Word file, and they print the book for you.
Oh.
And let me tell you, this is a remarkable feeling. You send the book to you, they send it back to you. I'm not going to say the price or anything like that because I'm not plugging Lulu specifically, although I love their service. You take the book out of the package and you hold the book in your hand, and it's got your title and your name and your words, and you're holding in your hands a book that you wrote. And it's absolutely one of the most incredible feelings that you can ever have. And it was called HMS Thutmo's the 41st, but it's not called that. And now it's called the Curse of the Rubidium Ruby. It's a much more marketable name, right?
Yeah.
And this is in the hand of the editors, and as soon as the editors are done with it, the rewrites are done and stuff like that, we're really looking for a serious publisher for this, because this is the first of the space light operas. And if we can sell this one, I can sell the next one of the Lord High Inquisitor.
So would you say that it's kind of when you're doing, or when you're looking back on your work, I guess, is it easier to kind of revamp things and look at like second draft stuff when you have it in this book form? Or?
For me, it is. I mean, I have an extensive process, in part because I was also a proofreader. Oh, man. I found a typo in Harry Turtledove's latest book. Anyway, so I'll go through multiple stages of editing. I'll type out the whole thing. I'll dump it to a printer somewhere and take it home. That's printed 2 up so that I don't kill too many trees, and make all the proof corrections, and then I'll send it to Lulu, and they'll send it back to proof copy. In fact, it says right on it, you saw that, but the audience didn't see it. It said proof on it in big letters. And then when I'm reading it, as though I'm reading a book, I can see typos, I can see places where the wording is awkward or where a verb is missing, which is, those kinds of things are very easy to miss when you're going through it rapidly.
That's very interesting. I'll have to try that, because definitely it's hard, like, when you just have something that you printed, or like on a screen even. Yeah,
on the screen it's really hard. I don't know how you do it, but again, because I was a proofreader, I'll take a pencil. And if you try to do that on a computer screen, you will ruin your computer screen in about 3 seconds flat.
Yeah.
So you can go word by word, you can read it out loud. It's a lot simpler that way. And it's like you have a book in your hands that you wrote. It's an incredible feeling.
Excellent. Well, good luck with the Curse of the Rubidium
Ruby.
Rubidium Ruby.
H's in both those words. They're made-up words. They're neologisms.
Ah, nice. Very nice. So once again, this is Dave D'Alessio, who has joined me today. You can find him in Daily Science Fiction, and I forgot the name of it.
Everyday Fiction,
Everyday
Scientist
Fiction.
Journal. If you can find old copies of The Other Side of Paradise from 1987, eBay, 50 cents.
Yeah. So definitely check him out. Are you on Twitter or anything?
I'm on Facebook. I have an author page on Facebook, and I have an author page on Amazon.
Okay, so yeah, Amazon and Facebook, Dave D'Alessio, and you can follow me on Twitter at Lioness Goddess. Thanks for joining us for Author Talk again. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.